Jules, thank you for being here. Future Fridays is all about interviewing revolutionary female founders, thought leaders, people in the space, really driving this world of transformational technologies and having a position and a stance on where the future is actually going. So I can't wait to get your hot take, especially on all things fashion, the social closet. You have had such a cool career from starting a socially conscious swimwear brand called Karma Bikinis to being an investor in Madrid on Think Bigger Capital. And then now with ensō, which is the social closet, really connected to attribution on chain, which we can get into. So I'm really inspired by what you're building and I can't wait to dive in. Before we do, can you share a bit about where you're calling in from and what are you focused on these days?
Yeah, so currently I am based out of Barcelona. I just moved here, so I'm very excited. So if anyone is in Barcelona, feel free to reach out. And what I'm focused on is basically building out ensō. So we're doing a lot of product calls because we're launching in September. So constantly just doing that and also having amazing conversations with customers and also with you.
I love it. So I would love to dive into how you went from like this really like physical product development process, which is such a beast in and of itself, producing a swimwear line to now moving into the Web3 space, idea of like attribution on chain. How did that happen? What sparked that? And why do you think it's even important? Like why have on-chain attribution?
Yeah, so I started Karma Bikinis with my sister actually when I was 15 years old. And that was actually a pretty insane story of its own. But the biggest thing at building out a brand was, at 15 years old, I literally knew nothing, right? I was an open sponge, but I was very curious. And that's something that's always come with me and driven my experiences. But like Karma Bikinis was an excellent start to kind of my entrepreneur career. And I worked on Karma Bikinis for 7 years. We raised money, did a mini accelerator program. We're able to travel around all of Asia and basically, connect with manufacturers of different degrees. But it comes back to my biggest passion is supporting those who want to build something. And I thought going into VC was going to be that experience. And I loved my opportunity. I moved to Spain very randomly, started learning Spanish, basically worked at a Spanish VC and started talking to a bunch of entrepreneurs. And I grew up in San Francisco. So in San Francisco, there was like constantly everything, like being a 15-year-old entrepreneur, they were like, oh, that's cool. And that was awesome. Like that was a great experience. But then going back is like, I did the VC life and it was great, but I craved again, getting into something and challenging myself. And that's how I kind of went back and started thinking about what opportunities were in the space. And it always came back to fashion because a lot of the things that we're doing today, it's like the way I connect with people is through fashion. And I don't know if it's ever happened to you and you've been in a bathroom and you see someone with like a very nice outfit or a cool purse and you just start like initiating conversation. And that to me is like my motivation on what I want to build is that constant connection, community building, just from something simple as like what we're wearing or what we're doing currently. And that kind of wrapped me into like getting involved into the Web3 space, which was a couple years ago, was basically that idea of something new, but something that I was curious enough to take advantage of and learn. And that to me was like the biggest thing. And there was so much hype around like Web3 and crypto, I think within the last couple of years. Obviously now it's maybe changed a bit, but we're still here, we're still building. But the idea behind ensō came from that is like, how can we support independent brands, independent designers that are currently struggling, right? In crypto today, like, of course, the market is struggling, but everyone's struggling a little bit, It's like brands, retailers, like when was the last time you were in a mall? Like imagine all of these independents that are basically trying to make a living out of this. It comes into play with obviously the whole economy. But I think that's what, like, I got into the space because of curiosity from technology, but then came back to my roots in fashion because that is what I love and I am super conscious about all the time.
I love that. So what would be like your controversial opinion or hot take on where the future is going, right? To your point, there's a lot of disruption, difficulty in the crypto space for sure. Also retail's tough margins, physical IRL spaces and like footprints are like, really disappearing or becoming really difficult to maintain. What's your hot take? Like, what's the controversial opinion of like where this all ends up in the future?
Yeah, I think that we are definitely onto something with Web3 and it being very community oriented. Because in the past, and this comes back to attribution, is like we as consumers, we're always supporting these brands, right? Like, when was the last time, like, I don't know if anyone has this, like a digital receipt of like all the jeans they've bought within the last like 5 years, right? And how do you know about that? Like, how can you track that? And how can you support those brands and those brands support you? Right. And a lot of the Web3 principles is like this community bridging, like it's bringing this community together, taking initiative, taking votes. And I think where like the world is going is we need to talk a lot more to our customers. We need to talk and understand basically what our community wants, because a lot of times it's driven from ego, right? A lot of times we don't think it, but it's hard. Like, it's a tough market out there. We really have to protect ourselves. But there's like this insane opportunities. Like, if you would have just had these conversations previously, maybe it would have helped just like either at least save some capital and allocate it to something different, or like build a different product, because it's, again, like we're all trying to get product market fit. And the future, it's like it's tough. Like, we're doing whatever we can to make ourselves survive. And what does that mean? And I think a lot within the bull market, it was like constantly like, oh, let's just keep pushing new things out because people will do it because they'll try it out. But again, it's like the stickiness. It's like they'll try it, but where is it actually going? It's like constantly like new updates, new updates, new updates, which is important. But again, it's like I'm always thinking, it's like we're in such a tough market right now. We have to be very strategic. And that means like talking to the people who are going to be purchasing or interacting with your app or with your community, etc. So yeah, I love that. I know we always talk about community and Web3, but I think we don't like quantify what is that community, and how can we reward those community members in a way that they keep coming back as well.
So cool. So what is a social closet? How does it actually work? So, being somebody who's been so in like the physical space of creating product, like what is that connection point? How are you thinking about ensō as a product where blockchain is truly part of that flow? For maybe someone who doesn't know anything about blockchain, like how would you describe a social closet that has on-chain attribution?
Yeah, so basically how we like to describe it is ensō is building a curation platform connecting brands and designers with their tastemakers, and those tastemakers being anyone from a brand ambassador, a key contributor to the brand, a huge fan, etc. And where they actually take part in the process, whether that's helping choose the next color for the next collection, or on sizing, right? We always have issues with sizing. We're always constantly trying to get feedback, and we're trying to do it in a way where the community takes part in these initiatives and these launches. And then that all lies within a social digital closet, like a digital closet of having all your favorite jeans that you've ever worn, and also like a representation, a digital collectible, whether that's just a digital receipt or also a 3D object. But that's like kind of where we see it, is like we see a huge potential in being able to save something, but also take part and get rewarded for it, right? We imagine it almost like a loyalty rewards program where it's like, imagine like you are supporting, you're contributing to all these different brands, but then you have a place where you actually get rewarded, right? Because we talk about attribution all the time, and maybe use something like Pinterest, for example, right? And Pinterest does a great job with attribution, but it doesn't do it on the creator side. It's like we don't know where our links are going to. And there are other creator platforms, one that's called Like to Know It, if you've ever heard of them. And basically, it's always the influencers posting their different links. But those are going back to very centralized companies like Amazon, for example. They do a great job at doing this. It's like you put up your Amazon wish list, and then you have these different products that you're recommending, and you make probably between 1% to 2% maximum off each product, or even less probably. But again, like, how does that pay out? It's not normally instantly. You have to go through Amazon. There's certain probably KYC you also need to go with. And it's not like a clear, transparent transaction. It doesn't instantly go to your wallet. So that's something like I'm always constantly thinking about, because imagine like I'm an influencer and I am constantly like, these are my routes of like how I'm monetizing and creating revenue for myself. And imagine like one day Amazon says like, hey, like we're not paying you out until this certain day, or et cetera, we're withholding, or just something happens on their end. It's like, oh, great. Now, what am I supposed to do? Like there's no like protection off that. And also like just transparency is like, obviously the brands are doing it in because they need maximum data, right? But again, like if you would ask your customers kind of what they want, you're getting direct data from them, right? And people are more than willing to give those answers and give that feedback, knowing at some point they have either a closer relationship with this brand, or again, like some type of reward that's initiative with it. But we see ensō as like, we're going to launch our beta in September, and we're first launching it almost like a Pinterest style, where you can kind of pin things together. And you can also see who else is part of this community. You could also, eventually, it's going to be that you can vote on certain things, and those rewards are going to be held in your wallet, so that we can track better, what your initiatives are on chain, and do it in a very efficient way. And we're using like account abstraction, so you can log in with your email, you can log in with your Instagram, or you can log in with your Lens account, etc., and or your existing wallet. And this way, it's like, it's not very scary. It's like, oh, there are options for newbies, and there's also options for Web3 native. So I'm super excited about that, because like, obviously the technology is getting so much better.
Absolutely. And what do you think is the most exciting thing that you've learned in this process of going into the Web3 space and applying it to an actual beta product?
Yeah, what I've learned a lot is, it sucks because sometimes you really want to support these emerging technologies, but it's very difficult. When you're going out and raising capital for this idea, you need it to function well. And if there is a point of time where it's not functioning because it's not your fault, but someone else's fault, it's tough. Like, it's where you're taking into consideration, okay, do I go to more of a centralized database rather than a decentralized database? And why am I making those answers to that? Like, I'm always constantly battling that, because it comes from like the nature of like a very traditional company as well. It's like, we normally go with what we're comfortable with, but this space is constantly about like, oh, let's dive in, let's try new things, and that's incredible. But again, we need cushion for that. We can't just like keep shipping things out just because that's what the investors want. But it's more like, oh no, this is excellent. Like, we can have time to fully develop something. So I think that like Something I'm always, always thinking about is like, okay, yes, this new technology is arising. Okay, amazing. Let's do research on it, do my diligence, talk to some of their founders or someone from their team, and then see ways of how we can implement it, which is amazing. But then again, I put it into factor of like, okay, if this would happen, like, what happens with my end user, right? It's like always doing this testing. Yeah.
So cool. Is there a person or a company that's really inspiring you in the space, whether it's in loyalty or identity or in like physical to digital NFTs?
Yeah, I would say a wide range of different products. So I think something on like account abstraction, like dynamic is really cool, dynamic.xyz. I think what they're working, I think with sound.xyz, also sound.xyz is an excellent use case of like bringing people together that are just super passionate about music. And that is so incredible to me. And I really like we have a good fashion community, but it's still so small. But again, like most of the women in this space love fashion. You know, they connect with it. We're always constantly purchasing. We connect over brands that we both like. And yeah, I think basically all the women founded DAOs that are existing also are very inspiring to me. That like She-Fi, for example, we do a lot of events with them. And Maggie is like an incredible human and always super passionate. And right now she's like preparing for season 9. And I just see her dedication towards that, you know, and educating, because that's the principle of where we need to come from, right? It's like the amazing podcasts like video series like this, where it's like people can learn and get this content and information and then digest it and then be able to, you know, figure what they want to do from that. Maybe they learn something. um, but yeah, I think for me, like what's inspiring is, yeah, all these women that are getting into the space and are trying new things. And whether they're a first time founder or a second time founder or a third time founder, it's like we're all in the same boat. We're all willing to make you know, these decisions and risk. But again, it's kind of like the energy around it that is very inspiring.
It really is. It's just so motivating to be surrounded by like really high energy, excited, and like high integrity people, which may not always seem like that's the case, but I think that's actually what keeps a lot of us here, is like being outside of that bubble that externally can seem like it's just chaos, but actually
Yeah.
pretty good. And so how can we keep in touch with you? I know you're pretty active on Twitter, and then just with the project as well as you go into launching the beta for ensō.
Yeah, if anyone wants to be an early beta tester, feel free to DM us on Twitter or even on Instagram or on email. We are we're going to do a lot of testing starting in 3 weeks, so we're super excited for that. And then yeah, like I'm always curious if there's any like other founders as well that want to just have some founders therapy. I'm more than happy to jump on a call, because I think again, like I was just talking to another founder before this, like we're supporting each other. We're the ones, you know, when there's like days that are amazing and also days that also suck, you know, it's that, I think that's incredible. But yeah, like I'm happy to talk to any future people who want to onboard onto ensō or have any feedback for me on things that we already have built. So yeah, like Twitter, email. My Twitter is like for ensō, it's like ensō_collective. And then my Twitter is at Julianne Worring, so I can share that with you guys.
Amazing. We'll definitely link that in the transcript. And Julia, thank you so much for joining today and sharing and everything that you're building. It's so inspirational. I can't wait to be part of the beta and just follow along. So thanks so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Alana.